Hi there, this is Terry from Stamping Magic. Welcome back to my channel. Today's project is this little gift bag or treat holder. I've used the Beauty and Joy stamp set for both the image and the sentiment, and I've used the Crackle Paint background stamp for the rest of the bag. So let's get started. These are all the measurements you need for the various elements required to create this project. So if you're interested in reproducing it, you can take a screenshot and refer to it later. I'm using a piece of thick, very vanilla card for my bag. It's going into my Simply scoreboard with the longest side across the top, and I'm going to score down at 3 inches, 4.5 inches, 7.5 inches and 9 inches. Then I'm going to quarter turn clockwise and score down at 1.5 inches. There's just a little cutting to do for this bag. The first thing is to remove this small rectangular piece in the bottom right corner. So I'm just going to cut that away. And when I cut the top part of it, I'm going to slant cut the bottom of that 1/2 inch tab on the side. And I'm also going to notch the top end of this as well. Next, I'm going to create the tabs along the bottom. And I'm going to do this just by cutting up the score lines to the horizontal score line. And then I'm going to notch either side of the smaller square tabs. I'm only going to fold and burnish some of the score lines now. I'm going to do the bottom edge, and then I'm going to fold in that 1/2 inch tab, and then I'm going to fold the rest of the bag in half. So on one side I'll have the front and a side section left exposed, and the other side will be the back and a side section. And these are just slightly smaller than the actual background stamp that I'm going to use. To keep this flat, I'm going to add a little temporary adhesive to the inside. This is the Crackle Paint stamp set that I'm going to use. Now I've already positioned it and I know where to place my gift bag. I'm adding some more temporary adhesive to the back, and then I'm positioning the card onto my Stamparatus. You shouldn't be able to see any of the cardstock peeking out from the edges of the stamp. I'm going to use crumb cake ink this time, and I'll ink up my stamp and stamp it down twice just to make sure I get a very good impression. I'm now going to remove my cardstock and remove that temporary adhesive just by rubbing my finger over it. And then I can add some adhesive to the stamped side, reposition the cardstock in my Stamparatus, and then stamp the second side. Again, I'll do this twice with crumb cake ink. I can now remove all the temporary adhesive from my card. And then I can fold and burnish the remaining 2 score lines. This is the Beauty and Joy stamp set, and I'm using the pot, this foliage, the stems, the little star and the sentiment, as well as the little berries. I'm stamping on some scraps of thick, very vanilla card, and I'm going to start by stamping the sentiment in cherry cobbler. The plant pot will also be in cherry cobbler. I'm using crumb cake ink for the stems, The foliage will be in garden green. And the little star in crushed curry. And then I'll finish off again with cherry cobbler for the berries. And for this one, I decided to mask off that top berry. I'm going to die cut these pieces out with the rectangle stitch dies. I'm using the smallest one for the sentiment, the 5th size down from the largest for my main image, and then I'm also going to create a background mat for this in cherry cobbler, and I'm using the 4th size down. So I've die cut everything now, and I've also embossed the image panel. And to do this, I used the subtle embossing folder. I can now layer my image panel onto the cherry cobbler mat. And I will add dimensionals onto the reverse of this. I'm going to use the smallest hole punch on my crocodile to punch a hole in the sentiment. I have a small length of linen thread that I'm folding in half to create a loop. I'm threading the loop through the hole, opening it up and then pushing the ends through and pulling tight. I'm now going to add my image panel to the front of the bag. Now the front section is the one that has a side section on either side. The back section doesn't. I've added the dimensionals to the reverse so I can remove the backings and then position my panel. I can now finish assembling the bag. The glue will go onto the 1/2 inch side strip, and then you can fold the opposite end onto it. Now the largest section next to the join is the back, so when you do the base, that tab folds in first. Then you can add glue to the remaining 3 tabs. The side ones get folded next, and then the front one, and that leaves a nice neat edge along the front. To finish the top, I'm going to push the sides in with my 4 fingers, and at the same time squeeze the front and the back together, and just pinch it closed. And you just want to make sure that the sides are neat. You might need to just push them in. I now want to mark the position for the holes on the top of the bag. Now my bag is 3 inches wide, so I'm going to make a mark about 1/2 inch deep at 1 inch and 2 inches. And then this time I'm going to use the largest hole punch on my crocodile to punch through both sides of the bag together. I'm going to use some of our diagonal striped ribbon in cherry cobbler. Now I'm going to add my treat first of all, and I've just got some chocolate snowballs, and then I can thread my ribbon through. Just make sure it's not twisted on the back. Then I'm going to tie 1 knot and hold it in place with my reverse tweezers while I add the tag. And I'm just tying the tag onto the edge of the ribbon. I can trim off the excess, and then I can finish tying my ribbon into a bow. And then as a final finishing touch, I'm just going to add 1 small rhinestone to the tag. And that's it, my little bag is complete. and here's another look at my original one. This one was mainly in Rococo Rose. I used Old Olive for the foliage and Cherry Cobbler for the berries again. I think this one would have looked better if I'd used Crumb Cake for the bag. I do prefer the newer version. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notifications bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. Bye for now.